We're expecting to learn more today about the defense President Trump's legal team will present in his impeachment trial. That trial to determine the former president's role in the assault on the Capitol will begin next week, and Democrats face an uphill battle with several Senate Republicans signaling they don't plan to convict Mr. Trump. Grace Segers is a CBS News political reporter. She's here now to break this all down with us. So, Grace, today is the due date for former President Trump to file his response to the article of impeachment. For people who might not know, what is the purpose of this response and what will it tell us about his defense?
So the purpose of this response is to kind of lay the groundwork for what President Trump's defense will be in the trial. So his lawyers are expected to say that this trial is unconstitutional because a president cannot be tried after he has left office. They are also expected, perhaps, to argue that Mr. Trump did not incite the insurrection on January 6th, although the main focus of their argument is expected to be on the constitutionality of holding the trial in the first place. But basically what this is kind of a setup for what the trial will look like and what the argument for the president's lawyers will be.
Yeah, and we actually got a little bit of a tease on that front. One of President Trump's new lawyers appeared on Fox News yesterday where he said that the assault on the Capitol was premeditated, but that President Trump was not to blame. And he then said that President Biden should have demanded the trial be called off. And he talked about the constitutionality. So what is his strategy here, and what do we know about this new legal team that the former president has?
So President Trump has two new lawyers, David Schoen, who is a criminal defense and civil rights lawyer based in Georgia, and Bruce Castor, who is a former district attorney from Pennsylvania. And what we're really expecting is a focus on the constitutionality question and whether it is possible to try a president after he has left office. As Schoen suggested, also, they are going to argue that the president did not incite the insurrection, that he did not egg on his supporters, which is really the argument that you're going to be hearing from Democrats, is saying that the president explicitly wanted his supporters to seek to overturn the election and, quote, fight like hell in whatever way they could. So we're expecting to see a rebuttal to that argument and also just a focus on the constitutionality and the idea that a president can't even be tried at all once he has left office.
It is remarkable. You mentioned videos, Grace. A source says that House Democrats do plan, in fact, to show social media videos during the impeachment trial. And you had the president's lawyer yesterday on Fox News saying, does America really need to see this? I mean, I'm not even going to go and explain, why that is sort of, on just the face of it, kind of a ridiculous assertion. But you've also got folks who support President Trump, former President Trump, like Lindsey Graham, saying that if the Democrats choose to call witnesses, for example, he's going to want the FBI to testify. And I think all of America said, yeah, great, the FBI should be. So I guess the point I'm trying to make here, or I'm trying to ask you about is, oftentimes it seems as if the president's team, some people are not playing by the same pages. We saw it in the aftermath of the election where you had, the Justice Department and everybody who had a real role in certifying our election saying, there was no widespread fraud, but then you had the president's lawyers out there alleging what they did. So what's going on there?
Well, yeah, there is kind of a bit of disagreement in these arguments here that the president's supporters are making. But what makes this case so unusual is that the whole country saw what happened on January 6th. I mean, the rioters, like you said, they were posting social media videos of themselves charging into the Capitol. You also have the evidence from reporters who took videos of that day. So we all saw what happened, which makes this quite an unusual case, actually, because Democrats are arguing that the only evidence they really need is what we all saw playing out on TV on January 6th. So it's not as if there's something that needs to be uncovered, they're arguing. It's all right out there in the open.
Right, and we all saw read and heard what the president had to say in the weeks leading up to this event, how he encouraged people to come to the Capitol. He said it was going to be wild. I mean, you kind of don't really need to hear from the president because it's all out there already. But that being said, today we're also getting our first look at the House impeachment manager's trial brief, which outlines their case. What are they going to be arguing, and how are they going to handle the claim from some Republicans that trying the president after he's already left office is unconstitutional?
Yeah, so Democrats are really going to push back against that unconstitutionality argument. They say that it is constitutional to try a president after he has left office. In fact, there's nothing in the Constitution that explicitly says that you can't do so. Also, previously in the 19th century, the Senate tried a cabinet official who had resigned after he had left office. So they're saying that there's precedent. We've done this before. And also, as you mentioned, Anne-Marie, they're going to be pointing out the president's statements in the weeks leading up to the rally on January 6th, when he was tweeting about it and saying it's going to be wild, be there on January 6th. And they're going to be pointing to that, as well as to the president's speech before the rally on January 6th, when he encouraged his supporters to, quote, fight like hell to overturn the election. So they're kind of taking a dual track here, where they are going to be looking at, A, what the president said and did leading up to the events of January 6th, and B, rebutting the argument from Republicans that it's an unconstitutional trial.
And to that point, I mean, not only during the arrests of some of the insurrectionists have they explicitly stated to law enforcement officials that they were there because President Trump told them to be there. You've got that testimony. You have it in video. In many of the videos that we've seen, you could hear people saying exactly that. And Grace, I know, and you and I have talked about this. You wrote a TikTok, what we call in the news business a TikTok, a timeline of how it played out for you as a reporter in the House chamber, in the Senate chambers on that day. And one of the things that, that stayed with me long after I read your piece and pointer was, this notion that the possibility existed that there were some lawmakers who could have potentially been assassinated. That's how close some of those insurrectionists were into coming into the room where you were with some of these other lawmakers. And so when you take all of that evidence that, as Anne-Marie said, we've all seen, we saw it in real time, and subsequent to the 6th of January, we've seen more and more uncovered on social media. You would think that this would make, as Lindsey Graham says, for a long trial. But Democrats are saying it's not going to be long because you have all the evidence. You have the words of the president going into the 6th from the time of the election. So what are you hearing about what the expectations are, how long it could take?
So it's probably going to be quicker than the last impeachment trial, which happened just a year ago and took about a week and a half. So as you say, the Democrats are arguing, we've already seen everything. That's why House Democrats impeached the president just 1 week after January 6th, on January 13th. And they didn't even have any hearings, which is typical before an impeachment vote. They said, we already know everything that we need to know, so let's just have this vote. So I would expect that the trial would be pretty quick as well, because, as you said, there's a lot of video evidence, a lot of firsthand evidence from people who were there. And we know that the lawmakers themselves were there on January 6th. So they can refer to their own experience with it as well. And I think also that you're not going to see a very involved argument from the president's lawyers beyond the constitutionality question. So I would really expect this to only take a few days, because all of the case against the president and for him have already been laid out.
So in light of the fact that we've all been saying how much of the evidence is already out there, what's the likelihood of us actually hearing from the former President Trump or anyone who was involved in the riot itself?
So at least one person who was involved in the riot, a so-called QAnon shaman who infiltrated the Senate chamber on the 6th, has said that he is willing to participate in the trial. His lawyer said that he was, quote, smitten by President Trump, and that because of this, he is willing to testify against the president and feels as if he was betrayed. I wouldn't expect to hear too much from the president himself. And in large part, that's because President Trump is no longer on Twitter. I think that if he were on Twitter, we would be seeing a lot of tweets during the trial defending himself and making arguments for himself. But he was suspended from Twitter weeks ago. And I just don't think you're going to see the same level of participation from him without that outlet.
The sweet sound of silence, Twitter silence. And Vlad, I have to thank you for pointing out that, yes, long before TikTok was a social media platform, we here in the news business, we did it first.
That's right.
We were cool first.
We're the OG TikTok.
Right? Exactly. Hey, Grace, thank you so much.
Thank you.